I've gone back and forth on whether I should make this video or not, but here goes nothing. My name is Sebastian Drinceanu, and today I want to answer a single question, both for you and for me. Who am I? As I most certainly know that at least some of my classmates and class master are listening to this audio prompt, I suppose I should begin with a surface-level summary. I'm a 19-year-old high school student from Romania, with a YouTube channel started way back in September 2022. Now, before I go any further, I do want to mention that this video contains chapters, so it's easier than ever for you to skip to the parts that pique your interest. In this part of the video, I'll be focusing on my childhood and how its shortcomings shaped my whole personality. I was born and raised into a violent, dysfunctional family, and for the first 7 years of my life, all I heard and saw was drama, fights, and abuse from both of my parents. My mother was already emotionally unstable due to her also being born in an abusive household. However, the situation only got worse after my sorry excuse of a father started abusing her emotionally and physically. That trauma never left her, and she still bears the abuse marks even to this day. Anyways, picture a 6-7-year-old child trying to drown his tears and fear while listening and seeing his parents throw each other across the room full force, sometimes even knocking furniture down. My mother started blaming me for everything bad that was happening in the apartment. I was a scapegoat, a tool that my mom used to get rid of her frustrations, a punching bag that she would use all the time to project her insecurities. At the time, it was common to hear, "You're worthless. I'm going to send you to an orphanage if you misbehave. You don't need other friends. I'm already the best friend you'll ever have." Naturally, if I didn't comply with her twisted rule, I'd get beaten up and sent to my room, crying out of fear. It had gotten so bad that I was genuinely afraid to even talk to her anymore, or do something that might remotely make her upset. As the years went by, I became more and more isolated from the outside world, losing childhood playmates along the way and rarely speaking to my new classmates. It didn't help that when I started to get bullied in 3rd grade, my mother would continue the abuse at home, punishing me for standing my ground against those whom I hated from the bottom of my heart. All of this culminated in the winter of 2017, when I received the hardest beating I had ever experienced up until then. My mum was sick in bed, and she tasked me with bringing a cup of water and a pill to her lap. However, when I reached the bed, I tripped over a ledge, spilling everything on the ground. She was already furious with me, so to finally punish my actions, she had grabbed a thick wooden broom handle and proceeded to beat my back with it, until the handle had literally broken in half. My whole chest area and spinal cord were hurting for weeks to come, and even to this day I sometimes feel a sudden ache in my lower back when bending. This was my breaking point, the day that finally made me put an end to her physical abuse and try to break free from her grip. Keep in mind that I was still only an 11-year-old child when this happened. From here, my relationship with her would only start to deteriorate further. Living with my mother today is still very much a nightmare. However, the circumstances are quite different now. My mom is a demented hoarder, through and through, and the following pictures should be enough evidence. There's so much trash everywhere that it's honestly a miracle I'm still alive. She also doesn't want to work a proper job. Not because she's incapable, but because she's too thick-headed and thinks recycling bottles gives her enough revenue for the monthly expenses. Oh, and the irony here is that she's living off of government money while actively critiquing said government that she doesn't earn more for doing nothing. Yeah, it shouldn't come as a surprise that my mom is also well into conspiracy theories and misinformation from the media. Anyways, in recent years I've started to grow more and more hatred towards her, to the point that I wouldn't mind if she disappeared forever or perished in a horrible way. She has not provided clean, fresh food bought from a store in more than 2 years. She has never taken me to the hospital for care and treatment, even when it was clearly necessary, and, more important than both of these, she has constantly manipulated me emotionally. It's no surprise that my hoarder mother is also a dumpster diver. That's where she gets most of her junk from. She had made me eat rotten food too, until I verbally attacked her to the point that she left me alone. It's also no surprise that this rotten stuff also caused me several illnesses, such as brown pus coming out of my belly button and constant skin irritation. Also, she got me to wear glasses way too late. I was born with myopia, so I already had a short-sighted vision. However, by the time I underwent a vision test, I had already developed severe hypermetropy too, which means I could view certain objects as a double image on the retina. As I said, I could have forgiven her for all of these things if she just loved me unconditionally as a true mother would and showed me basic human decency. However, that was never the case. She always held me to unreasonably high standards, demanding that I am the best of the best in my class, and each grade below 90% was considered a failure. Of course, she did eventually tone down her expectations. However, the damage was already done by then. I suffered from a low self-esteem for most of my life, and, even today, I still struggle to keep my self-worth in check. She would constantly manipulate me into believing that she's the most important person in my life, and that if I lose her, I'd lose everything. And that would be exactly what she'd use to blackmail me with when I had a mental breakdown. I had quite a few in the past, and only one this year. I would only explode in her face when I couldn't handle the immense emotional pain she put me through, only for her to come around after and act as if she's the victim and I'm the abuser. It's a textbook narcissistic thing to do, and unfortunately I've fallen into her trap every single time. In recent years, my emotional side had become so unstable that I seriously considered offing myself multiple times, because I saw my whole existence as nothing more than a burden on this cruel world. And if I didn't find two of my biggest passions in the fall of 2022, I would not be speaking to you right now. Last year I got my driver's license on the second attempt. After failing the first time, my mom made sure to deepen my emotional guilt even more by saying how useless, ungrateful, and unworthy of going to college I am. Her entire argument is based on the idea that because she provided me with minimal care, I should now bow to her and do all she says correctly. Over time, I developed certain skills to hide my true feelings from her, because I now know that her mind games are not worth the hassle. I'm not a particularly good liar, though, so sometimes I slip the truth and cause a massive scene without my intention to do so. Hopefully in the future I'll be able to fabricate more believable lies and slip out of her grasp. Believe or not, I have quite an active, intimate life, despite my exterior facade. All of these years of constant abuse have made me appreciate the little things in life. I feel at peace whenever my mom isn't home. It's like the whole world opens up to me. I like to take things slowly, sometimes, and being alone with only my thoughts feels like the ultimate blessing for me. That being said, I am an introvert at core, so the intrusive thoughts can protrude through the cracks. I overthink every single interaction I have with other people, to the point that it becomes a struggle. The biggest example that I can give right now is of an interaction with a certain classmate of mine. I won't mention their name, but what I can say is that they've cut off contact with me a month ago because of an awful decision made on my part. I still think about that online interaction even to this day. And if the person who I'm referring to listens to this, I profoundly apologize for making you feel terrible. I hope you can forgive me one day. I couldn't really say I loved someone in my life. I did have attractions towards certain people, yes. However, that teenager love quickly wore off as I began to move on with my life. And as for someone else loving me, well, I can only hope. Things took an insanely positive turn when I started making YouTube videos and working on my own projects. Back in August 2022, I discovered that I have a good automotive vision, and this was later reinforced with the introduction of some of the best-looking vehicle designs that both you and I have ever seen. Here are a few examples. I have finally found my purpose, my dream, my lifelong passion to become an automotive designer. Now, is this job realistically attainable? Maybe, but I'll have to go through hell and back in order to be accepted. Still, I can now rest peacefully, knowing what to do the next day. It's one of the only things keeping my sanity in check during these times. Keeping on the topic of tomorrow, I want to talk about my plans for when I will finally leave for college. I have decided to give my mother an ultimatum. Either she thoroughly changes her ways, or I will cut off contact with her. I know it sounds harsh, however, I have no reason to care for her anymore. She has raised me in subhuman conditions, so letting her rot in total isolation is only adequate. I will finally live independently. I know it'll be extremely hard, especially for someone like me. And that's to be expected. However, I'm more than willing to take the risk and go out into the world alone. At least I know I'll always be at peace from that point on. Silent out.